Kyle is part of a group of pitchers that requires the Cubs to test and use to hit extreme outcomes. Right now, the Cubs are projected to win 84, 85 games. Right now, the Cubs have a group of pitchers who can be considered quite volatile, both in the starting rotation and in the back end of the bullpen. For example, Javier Sa's looked great. I have confidence in Assad. I love his stuff. However, he's shown in the early goings an inability to get through the fifth and sixth innings. Jordan Wicks, ecstatic about his development. Great slider, great cutter, curveball is developing, changeup's phenomenal. He too has had difficulties in early going deeper into games. Now, there's a few different perspectives here. Kyle Hendricks should be DFA'd right now. That's an extreme decision. Now, the intention or the idea with that is, well, he's giving up home runs. His ERA is 10 to 12. Anyone but Kyle Hendricks is going to be better. Now, the counter to that in DFAing him now is, well, Kyle also presents one of those extreme high outcome possibilities. If you remove Kyle Hendricks from the equation, what do you lose? You lose a potential outcome, which means your extreme outcomes are pooled from a shrinking pool. Extreme outcomes from Assad, Wicks, the bullpen. We're talking about Yency Almonte, Jose Cuas, Leiter being extended. So if Hendricks is removed from this possible outcome list, then you're moving Assad up into the rotation, assuming he can go every fifth day, or if not every fifth day, once every 2 weeks. You're relying on him to be predominantly a starting pitcher. What does that do to the back end of the bullpen? Now, early going, Hendricks looks awful. He's saying himself, he's not giving his teammates a chance to win, and it's killing him. This is not sustainable. He knows it. Now, if you look at what he did today, he himself said he executed his command better. It was baby steps, but it's not where he wants to be. Nevertheless, there was progress. Now, does this mean the Cubs should skip Hendricks, take him out of the rotation right now? Well, that's going to be a decision for the pitching staff and council, but the alternatives don't appear obvious. If we're talking about projections and trying to confidently say, okay, this person is going to give the Cubs the best chance to win both now and within the next 2 months, I don't think you can convincingly say that the next alternative is going to do that, given the potential outcome for Kyle Hendricks. So as the next start or 2 starts go, we're looking in on that dialed in command, and there may come a point soon that you have to skip Hendricks, of course, similar to what you did with Taillon last year. Skip him, get him back right, and see if that's the way forward. But at the very least, what's undeniable is that the Cubs need to hit on the extremes to be a playoff team. By removing Hendricks, it would shrink down that pool of extremes. It would make probably the front office uncomfortable. And going forward, it would require differential roles that may be a little bit ambitious for certain guys. So my perspective is it is a little bit too early, but I am not thrilled with what I'm seeing. At the same time, I'm not overly concerned about stuff deterioration, but I'm a little concerned about the command. Of course, there's encouraging and discouraging trends. And of course, last week, Cody came on and got a little hot. I understand the angst by it. I understand the angst by Eli and other people in the chat. It's not acceptable. Like, we need to have deep starts, and Kyle is definitely not doing that right now. So I understand it, but I'm trying to get myself in the mind of the pitching staff, correct counsel, and everyone else. And I'm trying to understand the process. And I can't personally argue against taking Kyle off this roster because it is going to create greater stresses and pressures on certain other pitchers.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, and I think part of it is trying to, as usual, we're trying to sort through what is the logic between what they're actually doing, because he keeps pitching. So for everybody that's like, it's so easy, just DFA him, he should never be pitching, blah, blah. Well, Craig Counsell and Jed Hoyer don't seem to think so, at least right now. So we're trying to figure out what is the reason that they think that, and deeper than that, because obviously the people getting paid, 9-figure salaries to make those decisions have not reached that conclusion yet. And some people will say, well, it's because they, they paid him $16 million, so the Ricketts won't let them. I don't know.
I
I
will
do
say though
think,
that the 16 million is representative of what they believe Kyle can do. It's a significant amount of money. It pushes him towards a luxury tax. They were
yeah,
impressed by his 2023 performance and believe that's enough reason to think he can retain that in 2024.
yeah, I don't know. I think if Steele was back tomorrow, you couldn't convince me that letting Kyle keep one of those spots was the right decision, but he's not. And so I do understand the logic of them not necessarily being super confident that a rotation right now of Tyone, Shota, Wicks, Assad, and Ben Brown is the most reliable thing to trot out there. And I think they're desperately hoping Kyle can dial it in. But yeah, nobody's going to sugarcoat it. He looks awful. These results are totally unacceptable. He's killing the bullpen. Not just him, but he has in each of his starts. And when you see those mistakes, you saw it on the Sanchez homer today. They're not just taking advantage of mistakes. This is one of the worst teams in the league hitting the ball 460 feet. Some of the results speak for themselves, right? Like
Yeah.
that tells you a lot. But the team continues at this moment just not to be in the best position to remove, as you said, some potential options, as frustrating as it is. So, like I said, he's lined up, and I was reading this again from friend of the show, Matt Clapp. He's lined up to face the Red Sox, the Mets, the Padres, who have already knocked him around once, and the Atlanta Braves in his next 4 starts, if they give him those 4 starts. Good luck. You're going to have to figure it out and figure it out quick, because those offenses are not going to do that. Again, it's an interesting discussion because we did see some of this from Kyle last year. He figures it out. He's notoriously a slow starter in April throughout his career, even in years that he's been really good. But there is no amount of sugarcoating going on here. He looks bad. The results are bad. And yeah, I think so Chicago dude 8888 in the chat right now makes a point that I saw floating around on social media earlier. He lowered his ERA almost a full run after a 4-inning,
Baby
4-run
steps.
performance.
Baby steps, Corey. That's the progress I'm talking
That
about.
is one way to look at that. Yes. Yeah. So a comment from friend of the show, Greg Huss, who is one of the best Cubs prospect guys out there. If you are unaware of Greg's work, do check it out. He says, for what it's worth, it feels like the anger directed at Hendricks is like something we'd see about a brand new free agent, not a guy who's earned second, third, and fourth chances because of what he's meant to this franchise. So I do agree with that. And I think more than anything, what Kyle has earned is, when you talk about him, it should be done so with respect, right? Instead of like, this guy's a bum or et cetera, et cetera. He's earned, even if you don't want him pitching anymore, he should have your respect. He's more than earned that. But I don't know. At some point, you do have to kind of focus your current goals with the performance that you're seeing. You can't defer to past performance all the time and what guys have meant to the organization. And frankly, the people in charge of this organization don't really act that way. They traded a lot of those guys. Like, they got rid of several of those players that meant a lot to this organization. So I think you treat Kyle with respect in how you discuss these things and how you would handle these things, right? But Kyle should not stick in the rotation because he's a World Series hero. And I don't think that's what Greg meant. But I think there's a balance of those two things. You shouldn't speak of him in a way that isn't befitting of a World Series hero. But at the same time, Cubs won the World Series 8 years ago. It is very much like this team is trying to do
They did
certain things.
what?
The Chicago Cubs won the World Series 8
World
years ago,
Series. Okay.
2016. Yes.
2016 Cubs. Okay. Yeah.
But at the same time, you got to go out there and perform. And when we're talking about all these bullpen issues and all this other stuff, Kyle's performances are part that they play into that. And so you can't just defer to the past when these things happen. But it is it's a nuanced issue. Like I said, if it were up to me and Justin Steele was being activated tomorrow to pitch tomorrow, I would stop starting Kyle Hendricks. I would phantom IL him, or I would let him go work on stuff, whether that's in extended spring or whatever he wants. If he wants to go to Arizona, go do that. If you want to go pitch in Iowa, go do that. That's what he's earned, right? Whatever you want, but you got to get it figured out before we keep doing this at the MLB level. Steele is not back tomorrow. So I think they're going to give this another few and see if they can kind of keep moving on some of the better results that we saw today in terms of more soft contact. He didn't walk anybody. He did strike out 5. Same time, though, this was the Marlins. Like, the bar is pretty low, and they ended up doing some damage. So I don't know. It's a tough thing. Again, I'll end and throw it to you, and then we can hit our second ad break. He obviously does not look good. Nobody is going to pretend otherwise.
In the past, when pitchers of Kyle's age start to perform well, it's due to stuff. I'm not going to belabor the point, but your guy, John Lester, at the tail end of his career, was throwing 3 miles per hour slower. Still effective at times, but 3 miles per hour slower. The secondary stuff, as a result, was not as sharp. My former guy, Jake Arrieta, same story. Came back over to the Cubs, throwing 4 miles per hour slower. Cutter didn't cut as much as he used to. Different guy. What I'm trying to understand, which is a question that only the pitching staff and those within the dugout can address, is why is he getting blown up if his stuff looks exactly the same? If in fact the velocity is higher, which it is, why is he still getting eaten up? If the changeup looks exactly like it was to left-handed batters now compared to last year, why is it getting eaten up? The sinker command, of course, is the big culprit. We saw it today on that 460-foot home run. Sinker was supposed to be off the plate. It was center in. It went above the second deck in the bleachers in center field behind the batter's guy. What is causing that? Because it's not similar to what we've seen with older guys deteriorating in years past. And as a result, it does make me think that maybe this can be fixed. If it were a stuff issue, then I perhaps would be very negative with this. But to your point, given that Steele is not back, given that this staff has a flurry of problems right now in the bullpen and going deeper into games, I don't see the best next solution, because I'm equally concerned about the overall staff, even going into AAA to fill this void. So I don't know what to think about this. I do think a DFA, as people are saying, is quite an extreme interpretation, given that the stuff has not quite deteriorated yet.
We all silly like the mayor.